I learned the philosophical meaning of history. I was trained by the black masters of the subject. I gained a lot from my association with Cyphers, whose work never saw the light of day, especially in his work on the African contribution to the concept of the brotherhood of man. I learned a great deal from other Caribbean historians, J.E. Rogers, who did more in trying to show the personality of Africans in world history. I had to do a whole lot of things to hold myself together. Porter jobs, all kind of jobs, working in restaurants, making salads, but studying all the time, studying at night when I had to work in the day, studying in the day when I had to work at night, but continually studying. Literally gave myself a high school education and a college education. But my main focus is on the role of African people in the history of the world. I came by self-application, and I learned nothing in the universities, but learned how the universities avoided the subject.
Thank you, Brother Clarke. Dr. Ben, I'd like to put the question to you. What was it that set you on the path to liberate so many minds?
I guess a combination of things. I am the product of an Ethiopian father, of the Hebrew community, where they call, in the West call us Palashas, and a Puerto Rican mother. How that happened? They met in Spain. My mother was a candidate for midwife, and my father was coming back from Germany. He was a barrister, 22 years older than my mother, and he had just lost his wife and had a little son. My mother was 19, I think, and coming through Spain and the Phaeton, that's the horse and the thing. My mother was stealing, run away from the place, going across the street to get something to go back in, and the horse railed and almost killed her. My father jumped out to save her, and he fell and hurt us. That's what they said. And that shock and everything, they got together. He told her she wasn't going anywhere. She was going to be his wife. They took her to the boats, to the Gibraltar, and the captain married her then. And that's the beginning. I understood I was made someplace between the canals. So that's how it started. Then about in my 6th year of age, it was the time of Emperor Lijasu. Signed my father to go to Brazil to work as the consul general there, and the coffee and so forth. In the meantime, while being there in 1924, Selassie, the Abuna, Johannes, and a number of them overthrew the Lesotho government. My father was then without anything, and so my mother took us, we had to go to my mother's home, Puerto Rico, by way of Cuba, and then we went to Puerto Rico. I grew up in a system there where the Americans are taking over, Americanizing the Spanish Caribbean system into American system. And the school books, I read a little book, Little Black Sambo in Spanish. And and I went home to complain to my father about the thing was said about Ethiopians being savages and things like that. And then my father told me, he was a lawyer, a barrister with the books and a shelf, and there was always a little section with he always locked, and he used to clean the books with a feather, a thin feather. And I could never go in there. So when I told him this day about Africans being uncivilized, with Tarzan and Jane movie and so, my father said, well, okay, let me show you this. And he took a key from his neck, from the chain, said, this is yours. And said, those set of books in there are yours. When you finish reading them, read all the footnotes, read the bibliography, and in the books that you read, that you refer to, the footnotes in those books, the bibliography in those books. And when you finish them, come back and tell me who has no history. Well, if you realize that some of the Book of the Dead, and different books like that, Anacalypsis and all of different writers, you would understand that I would have to live 1,000,000 years and still don't finish. And my father said, well, when you finish them, I know you wouldn't finish, that when you die, read them down there. So then I realized, and then my father wasn't satisfied. He said, no, it's time for you to go home to visit the Nile and see. So I went back to Ethiopia and visited my 11 grandmothers. I had my father's father, my grandfather, had 11 wives. And so each of those, then I tried to find out who was my biological grandmother. And my grandmothers told me it was no damn business of mine. Because they didn't deal with who gave birth to a child. It all was my grandmother's. And they centered around my father. So from then, it became a question when I came back. I started to speak to him about Egypt, at the end of the Nile. So he said, well, the best thing to do is to go to Egypt. But by that time, I had just got married. I was 18 and a half. I know that you don't like young married, but in the Ethiopian Orthodox family, I got married late. 18 and a half, because they had to pick out my wife, and I had to, that's why I was going to marry. I don't find nothing wrong with a good girl. I have my first 4 children by her. And so that's how I started. Then the teacher, Miss Armstrong, I'll never forget, from Texas one day told me that Africans had no history. I've been showing the world, not her, because I didn't care about her. I came out of school, I went home, and there's a thing you couldn't do. My father gave me a whipping for leaving the classroom without permission, and then carried me the next day to the teacher to tell her who didn't have a history. And Miss Armstrong left the job that day. She didn't have to put up with that. So, and then I joined as a young man in the University of Puerto Rico. I joined Don Alviso, the nationalist movement of Puerto Rico, and I joined the black shirts of the University of Puerto Rico. And then when the battleship Texas and the Talbot, they brought in to quell our uprising in Puerto Rico. We were trying to kill American governor. We did try, and we'll try again. then I joined, and then Marcus, a man named, my mother's people are between the eastern of Puerto Rico, Fajardo, and Santa Cruz, which is called St. Christ. And they live between the two, so my father would practice between both places. So I have a Caribbean accent. I speak Spanish like a Puerto Rican and English like a Virgin Islander. And between the two places, there I joined Marcus Garvey movement. A man named Morris Davis brought the Garvey movement to the Virgin Islands. I joined that. Hamilton Jackson was a lawyer and labor leader, became a judge and an atheist. I hooked up with him because the minister, the priest, used to hit people, actually hit people and tell them, why you aren't in church today? And I couldn't stand that nonsense. The priest, and then I belonged to, they had one Hebrew synagogue in St. Thomas. So my father would go Friday, we take the bus, the launch, go to St. Thomas, 40 miles away, across the Caribbean,